Hello everyone, my name is Ajay Raj and I'm an AP Lang & Comp with Mr. Bound. I just read On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. This novel has so much information and a wealth of knowledge that helps us shape our modern-day understanding of biology and species. However, I will be narrowing in on what I thought was the most important concept of the novel, natural selection. After having taken AP Biology the year before and focusing so heavily on the concepts of evolution, natural selection, and ecology as a whole, I became introduced to the various theories and concepts developed by Charles Darwin. As our knowledge of Darwin was somewhat limited, given that we only knew his base level theories, I wanted to investigate his story and see how he arrived at such accurate conclusions. Born in 1809 in Shropshire, England, Darwin had always been fascinated by the natural world ever since a young age. Growing up in a rather isolated town and environment, Darwin became immersed in nature, spending time in the fields and woodlands neighboring his quaint house. With an excess of time on his hands, Charles Darwin became an avid reader and would later foster his love as a naturalist and ecologist. During this time period of the early to middle 1800s, many naturalists and ecologists like Charles Darwin questioned the beginnings and the existence of nature as it is today and conducted research. However, despite this curiosity for scientific reasoning, many did not approve of the research and believed in the church's reasoning for this phenomenon, called transcendentalism, which I will discuss towards the end. Due to his vested interest in reading and humanities, Charles Darwin attended the University of Cambridge while studying theology, which is the study of religion and its history. This would become extremely important when inspiring Darwin to change his field to biology and ecology, as he would question religion's explanations and role in the creation of new organisms, such as humans. Famous naturalist and ecologist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck had been a major inspiration to Darwin when he was growing up and entering his collegiate years. Darwin began reading into this pioneer of ecology and his popular theories of geography influencing evolution. Darwin believed Lamarck had very strong and commanding evidence in his research, but he lacked strong central theories and conclusions. In the art depicted, the bird in its untouched and wild environment is similar to the various finches and pigeons that Charles Darwin had studied in the earlier years of his book writing. Aboard the HMS Beagle, he first visited the Galapagos Islands, which are extremely untouched and filled with vibrant plant life like in the Ark. In order to begin his research on the local species of finches and pigeons to identify their common ancestor. One of his first independent research studies on the Galapagos Islands was of the varying types of finches, most distinguishable by their different types of beaks. After gathering immense data on the different beak lengths and structures, it was apparent that the finches from the same island, as the Galapagos consisted of many smaller islands, had very similar beak structures. Darwin's conclusion of his finch research became extremely important in explaining what would become the first of three major parts of his theory of natural selection: variation. It was clear that the finches from the same island had similar beak structures that were better suited to their environment, which was different from island to island, leading to their overall variation. Upon Darwin's second most popular research endeavor on the Galapagos Islands, he had investigated two distinct species of tortoises on the islands, the saddleback and the domeshell. These two tortoises were located on two different islands of the Galapagos and were very similar in appearance, indicating that they were once related. However, they were distinguished by the evident difference in the lengths of their necks. Darwin used his research of the tortoises to further aid his second central claim of natural selection, adaptation. With these two tortoises having a clear distinction in the lengths of their necks, one with a much stubbier neck suited to eating short grass, and the other with an elongated neck suited to tall grass, showed how these two tortoises were better adapted to the types of vegetation they had on separate islands. As Darwin's third central claim and evidence of natural selection, Darwin used simple logic in that time was the most important factor in the creation of new species through evolution. He inferred that because life on Earth had existed for billions of years, it gave way for both adaptations and variations, which are both long processes, to constantly occur in the formation of distinct organisms and species. Excuse me. With a combination of the concepts of variation, adaptation, and time, Darwin formulated his famous theory of natural selection. The organism that is better suited to the environment is more likely to survive and reproduce, leading to the creation of new species. This theory would become the central point of his book on explaining his perception of evolution. When providing evidence outside of the scope of his own research, for he needed more substance and as evidence after making such bold claims in his theory of natural selection, Darwin began to hit a roadblock. Excuse me. He was confident in his theory, but he needed more validating evidence from different sources. However, outside research was limited, and Darwin relied mostly on his theoretical claims. In the year of 1859, Darwin officially published the book On the Origin of Species. John Murray, one of the top publishers in the UK, helped the book become a huge point of attention to the common public and the field of science. However, as later described, this attention was not all that positive and was mostly that of skepticism. As aforementioned, the church had come up with the explanation of transcendentalism to explain the origin of species. Their Christian belief was that God had created all the variations and species of organisms that we see today, and that no other organic mechanism could have done so. Due to Darwin's claims of natural selection being the main mechanism of evolution, he received much criticism. Various critics such as George Mivart and Fleming Jenkin, other authors of ecology, had accused Charles Darwin of the theories not only for their own contrasting viewpoints and theories, but because of his lack of experimental evidence. When writing his book, Darwin was rushed to publish in order to get his viewpoints on natural selection across before others had done so as well. Therefore, he admittingly left many of his theories without sufficient evidence. This image provides a superior depiction of nature and an old grand structure. This large castle represents a structure similar to that of Charles Darwin's home during his retired years after publishing his greatest novel on the origin of species. He was greatly isolated from much of society and was surrounded by nature, his life's passion. The impact of this book, despite the initial aroma of doubt that surrounded it upon its initial publication, came into fruition in recent times when modern-day biologists were able to prove such a vast majority of Darwin's theories. Darwin never abandoned his theories, even when the world's opinion was against him at the time, which was truly inspiring. As aforementioned, Darwin's claim of natural selection and his overall theories regarding evolution would become important in guiding further research. He had done this with such minimal resources available to him within that of his lifetime, working diligently towards discovery. As Darwin had said, a man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life.